Battlefield 6 does not just need new content. It needs players to believe it is worth coming back to. Now, I personally have not had too many issues with Battlefield 6. I have enjoyed it, but I do know that there's a lot of people out there that have been mixed with the game. And so that is a very different challenge because new maps, new weapons, new modes, new updates can get people to reinstall a game for a night. They can create a spike. They can, make players curious. They can get people to say, all right, let me see what changed. But keeping them, that takes something deeper. It takes trust. It takes momentum. And maybe more than anything, it takes the feeling that the game is finally becoming what players had hoped it would be. That is why Season 3 feels important for Battlefield 6. Not because one update can magically solve everything, but because this is the kind of moment where players start asking a bigger question. Is Battlefield 6 finding its footing? Or is this just another short burst of attention before players drift away again? That is the part I think I find interesting because with Battlefield, the question is really just, did they add content? The real question is, did they add the right kind of content? The kind that makes players remember why they cared about Battlefield in the first place. The kind that makes you want to squad up again. The kind that makes the game feel large, chaotic, unpredictable, and alive. The kind that makes a player who left say, okay, maybe I will give it another shot. No pun intended. So let's talk about whether Battlefield 6 can actually win players back. The first thing Battlefield 6 has to rebuild is trust. And trust is hard in a live service game because players don't only judge what the game is today, they judge what they believe it will become tomorrow. That is why launch impressions matter so much. When a game disappoints people early on, it's that you can lose trust right then and there. Or if players feel like the direction is not what they wanted, every update after that carries extra weight. So people are not just asking, is this new season good? They're asking, do I believe this team understands what the game needs? That is a much harder question because once players leave, they usually don't come back just because a patch note says there's some improvements. They come back when they hear the feeling has changed. When a friend says the new map actually feels good, when the community starts saying the game feels closer to classic Battlefield, and when clips start showing moments to remind people of the reason they fell in love with the series to begin with, that is what Battlefield 6 needs from Season 3. Not just a checklist, it needs a signal that the game understands what players have been asking for. And that is why the return of a large map like Railway to Galmed matters. It is not just nostalgia. It is not just bringing back a familiar name. It is the idea that Battlefield is listening to what players often say they miss. The scale, the vehicles, the open space, different play styles, and battles that feel bigger than one hallway or one choke point. Now, I personally have really enjoyed the new map, and it feels like a Battlefield map. So I think when Battlefield 2 feels too small, it loses part of its identity. It feels like just any other shooter. It can still be fun, it can still be intense, but Battlefield has always been at its best when you feel like you are one part of something much larger. That is what separates it from so many other shooters. A map can do more than give players a new place to fight. A good Battlefield map can change the entire emotional tone of the game. It changes how you move, how squads spread out, how vehicles matter, and it changes whether the battle feels like a cramped firefight or a full-scale war. And for players who walked away because the game did not feel enough like Battlefield to them, that kind of change matters. But here's the real challenge. One good map is not enough by itself. It can bring people back for a few matches, but it can't carry the whole game forever. So the next question is whether Season 3 creates a reason to keep logging in after the curiosity fades. This is where live service games either build momentum or they lose it. Because once, the content gets attention, then you have to assess, okay, is the rhythm to keeping that attention? Players want to feel like the game is moving in a direction. They want to feel like the updates are not just random. They want to feel like the developers are building towards something instead of simply adding things to fill their calendar. That is why Season 3 being split across multiple updates is kind of interesting. If each part adds something meaningful, then the season can feel like an ongoing conversation in a way with the player base. But if the content doesn't land, or if the core issues still feel the same, then the season can start to feel just like white noise, basically. And players can feel that. Gamers are very good at telling the difference between a game that is being supported and a game that is being revived on paper. Support is not just content, it's quality. Support is when the experience gradually becomes better to play. fewer frustrating moments. There's a better flow to it. There's a much clearer identity, and there's a stronger reason to return. That is why, or that is what Battlefield 6, I think, has to prove. Because winning players back is not only about giving them more, it is about giving them a better version of what they already wanted. And this is where the psychology of returning to a game comes in. So when players leave a game, they usually do not leave with zero emotion. A lot of the time they leave disappointed because they wanted to love it more than they actually did. And that's important. Apathy is one thing. Disappointment is different. Disappointment means there was still hope at some point. And if there was still hope, then there is still a chance to bring those players back. But the game has to give them a reason to feel that hope again. That is the emotional side of a comeback. Players don't just return because of this roadmap exists. They return because something makes them curious enough to check again. Maybe it is a big map. Maybe it's a weapon that feels satisfying. Maybe it's a mode that finally gives gives the game a new rhythm. Maybe it is seeing the community talk positively for the first time in a while. But at some point, the player has to feel that little spark again. The feeling of, maybe this is worth my time. And for Battlefield, that feeling usually comes from moments. Not menus, not cosmetics, not even the patch notes, but moments, the Battlefield moments we love. The first time you spawn into a match and the map feels huge. The first time your squad pushes an objective and vehicles are moving all around you. The first time a match creates that classic Battlefield feeling where the whole thing feels messy, alive, and unpredictable. That is what players are really looking for. They're not just asking, is there more content? They're asking, does this feel like Battlefield again? And that is the biggest opportunity Season 3 has. It can remind players that this series does better than anyone else in that area. Battlefield is not at its best when it is trying to beat every shooter at once. It's at its best when it leans into what makes it different. The scale, the teamwork, the vehicles, the unscripted moments, the feeling that every match can produce something you didn't plan for. So if Season 3 brings more of that feeling back, then yes, I think Battlefield 6 has a real chance to win some players back. But there's also another side to this. The game also has to respect players' time. That might sound simple, but it matters a lot. People have options. Gamers have options. We have a lot of options. There are too many games competing for attention, and a live service shooter like Battlefield 6 has to earn its place in someone's routine. If a player comes back and immediately feels confused or frustrated or overwhelmed, or like the grind is the main point, they might leave again and even faster than before, and they may never return. The retention would probably be terrible. Returning players are fragile. They're curious, but skeptical. The trust has slightly been broken there. They want to be surprised, but they are also watching for the same issues that pushed them away to begin with. So that means Season 3 has to do two things at once. It has to excite the players who stayed, and it has to reassure the players who left. It's not easy, because the loyal player and the returning player are not always looking for the exact same thing. The loyal player may want more depth, more unlocks, more balance changes, more reasons to keep grinding. The returning player may just want to know one thing. Is this game fun again? That question is pretty simple, and it's probably the question that decides whether Season 3 works or not. Not whether the roadmap looks good, not whether the update has enough bullet points behind it, not whether the trailer looks exciting. When someone actually loads in, do they feel that pull? Do they want to play another match? Do they feel like the game respects what Battlefield is supposed to be? Do they finish a session thinking, okay, I forgot how good this could feel? That's the real test. A comeback does not happen when a game gets just one good update. A comeback happens when the player base starts believing the next update might be good too. And that's what creates momentum. And right now, that is what Battlefield 6 needs more than anything. Season 3 can be a turning point, but only if it does more than temporarily raise attention. It has to give the community something to build on. A stronger map direction, a clearer identity, better reasons to squad up, and a feeling that the game is becoming more confident in what it wants to be. That's what players are looking for. And honestly, I think that is why Battlefield fans can be so critical. It's not always because they hate the game. Sometimes it's because they know what this series can feel like when it works. They remember the moments, the massive pushes, the ridiculous vehicle battles, the revives that saved an objective, the matches where everything was falling apart and somehow the team pulled it back. That is the emotional standard Battlefield has to live up to. I felt this way about Battlefield 2042. It completely lost me for quite a while, and I played it a little bit later on, but it still felt like it was missing something. So Battlefield 6 is a critical point, I think. So when Battlefield works, there's really nothing like it. So I guess I have a question. Can Battlefield 6 win players back? I mean, I think it can, but not just with content. It has to win back the feeling. It has to make returning players believe the next match is worth it. It also has to take curiosity into question. It has to turn curiosity into trust. So season 3 might not fix everything, and I don't think it has to, but it does need to prove something. It needs to prove that Battlefield 6 is not just adding more. It has to be about quality. It's and I think it's becoming better. But at the end of the day, players don't come back to a game because the roadmap tells them to. They come back because the game gives them a reason to feel something again. And if Battlefield 6 can do that, then maybe Season 3 isn't just another update. Maybe it is the beginning of a comeback. So if you enjoyed this deeper look at Battlefield 6, make sure to like the video and subscribe. I'm going to keep exploring games from more of a psychological lens, and that is sort of the approach I took with talking about Season 3, is that it's more about the psychological feeling and emotion that pulls us in. So it's not just what's getting added to an update, but it's why certain games make us care enough to come back to them if we have strayed away. And I think, this is an opportunity for Battlefield to step into that role. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this content. Feel free to stay tuned for more updates as I keep, doing this thing that I'm doing. And just remember, everybody, every day is game day.
We're moving on Delta.
I'm stuck in his head!